Hi, Pirate MIDI family. My name is Sam and I'm the firmware and hardware designer here. We've been working on the Bridge 6 for a long time, so we're really excited to show it off to you. Now, I just wanted to take a couple of moments to showcase some of the features and firmware functionality that we think is really cool and makes the Bridge 6 really special. So let's take a look. Inside your Bridge 6 box, you'll also get a really high quality right angle USB-C to Type A connector. And we made sure that it's long enough for most use cases and is also going to last a long time. So when we plug it in, you can see we're greeted with the default configuration, which has the banks labeled by number and also the foot switches. Now we can edit all of those names, of course. So let's take a look. So in the menu, right away we're greeted with the ability to change the LED colors of the different switches. And this is per bank, so every bank can have its own unique configuration. So let's say we want to change LED 2. We can change the primary LED, which is used for most situations to display the toggle type and other settings. So we can change it to aqua or a few other colors as well. Let's go to aqua. Now in the editor app, of course, you can set your own custom colors up as well. So we can see now, when we exit the menu, when we press these switches, the default color there is set to coral, and this one is set to aqua. Now, a really exciting feature that lots of people have asked us about is also the ability to control the device remotely via MIDI. So I've got a Touch OSC instance running here, and it's connected to an MIDI interface on the computer, which is also connected to the Bridge 6, or the Bridge 6 is connected to it. So we can pipe MIDI in between those two. You could use another app such as OnSong or another MIDI control input. So you could use the TRS MIDI input as well if you like. We can see when we press the switches here on the iPad, all of the switches are completely controllable, and that works for banking functionality and most general features, so you can remotely control every aspect of the device. So let's go back into the menu and look at some of the other really cool features under the hood. So like I said, we can edit the bank name, and we can go into channels. Now channels refers to each of the switches at a bank level. So when you make these changes to the channels, it means that you can have unique configurations for every bank, and there's 100 banks in this memory. So we can go into channels, so we can edit channel 2. Now, first up, we're greeted with the LFO, which is really, really cool. So we can adjust quite a lot of parameters here, so I'll go through them and give you guys an idea of how powerful these LFOs are. So we can control the state of the LFO, whether it's on or off. And as I said, every bank, every foot switch can have its own unique configuration. So on or off, we can control the sync source, so whether it's synced to any of the two independent MIDI clocks, which can also be in turn synced to an external MIDI clock. And then if it's free running, we can control the frequency in hertz increments, and it also goes down in 0.1 hertz increments as well. So we'll set that to 5. Now trigger, we can set this to toggle or momentary, how you want to control the LFO. So if it's toggle, it will toggle it on or off with the foot switch. And if it's momentary, you can do it for really nice live dynamic controls. So when you release the foot switch again, it will turn the LFO off. We can set amplitude limits for the LFO, min and max. We can set the shape of the LFO. So at the moment we have sine, triangle, saw, ramp. Ramp is a linear ramp where it ramps up, and when it gets to the limit, it simply stays at that 100%. So you can do some really cool time-based and pitch shifting effects using that. Square wave, sample and hold, and random. And then we can control the message stack that we would like to send with the LFO. So you're not just restricted to sending one MIDI message with this LFO. You can control any of the available message stacks. Now the message stacks are really cool, and they refer to what action the foot switch has been assigned to. So there's independent message stacks for every type of action on the foot switch. So there's one when you activate it, so when you toggle the channel on. There's one when you bypass it, so turn the channel off. Then there's also one for every time you press the foot switch. There's one for a double press of the foot switch, one for a hold event on the foot switch, and then also when you release that hold event. So you can assign any of those message stacks to the LFO to be sent out. And then you've also got a modulation source. So not only does every channel have its own dedicated LFO, but there's some global LFOs as well, which have all the same configuration options, but you can use those global LFOs to target the channel LFOs and create complex FM MIDI synthesis with it. And you can target the frequency and any combination of the frequency, minimum and maximum limits. So you can see all the combinations there. You can decide whether when you stop the LFO and then start it again, whether it resets the waveform or it pauses and picks up where it left off. And then you can also adjust the step size to make a staircased granular LFO response or a really nice smooth LFO response, depending on the step size you've chosen. So like I said, that's the LFO section, and then we can go in and, as I was showing you, adjust the message stack. So we've got active, bypass, press, double press, hold, and hold release. So if we go into the active messages, we can see right away that there's only one message. So when I try and scroll up, there's only one message assigned to it. So let's add some more. We can go add, and we can see we're adding a new message into the next available slot. So message 2. And we can decide whether it should be a control change, program change, all the standard MIDI options that you would get. And we're working on some really cool current firmware features for adding customized delay lengths with 1 millisecond increments that you can add in at any point during this message stack. And you can go through and configure all the options you like. Now, not only that, but you can go through and configure exactly what MIDI outputs you would like every individual message to go to. So the Flexi ports can both be configured as MIDI outputs. The DIN5 can be is a dedicated MIDI output, and you've of course got the USB. And you can do that for every type of message. So we'll go through, make that just a program change, and you can see now we've got 2 MIDI messages, and you can of course go and delete those. And then we can go through and add in some of the blank fields for the MIDI messages. And for the active and bypass messages, you can go right up to 48 is the current firmware configuration for the message stacks. And then there's a huge number for the other different types of message stacks as well. Let's go to channels. Now, the expression pedals are really neat. There's 4 expression pedal inputs available because each FlexiPort, the FlexiPorts are amazingly powerful. You can actually, using a special adapter that we'll have available on the Kickstarter, you can, or just after the Kickstarter release, we're still finalizing that, you can actually connect 2 expression pedals to the one FlexiPort. And so we can go into our expression pedals, and we can see 1A, 1B, 2A and 2B, and you can configure individual message stacks for all of those at a bank level. So there's a huge amount of power and flexibility. So we'll go back into the menu. I just exited out of it there. We've got channels, expression pedals, and now we've got some global settings. So we can adjust the switches. So foot switch 1. Now this is where we can assign some of the different switch modes, such as a tap tempo. So in the mode, you can see we can go tap tempo, and we could select either MIDI clock A or MIDI clock B. I'll go MIDI clock A and see that the tap is assigned. So if we exit out of the menu now, we've got our MIDI clock by default set to 120 beats per minute. And we can tap tempo that, we can send stop and start commands, but we can have 2 MIDI clocks running at the same time for some really, really amazing time-based options. So we'll go back into global switches. Let's set foot switch 5 as a MIDI clock. So we'll go mode, tap tempo, MIDI clock B. We'll assign that one. Now if we exit out, you can see we've got 2 MIDI clocks running, both set to 120 beats per minute, but we can set our own custom tempo there, of course, and you can see the LED, the secondary LED, and this is where the dual zone LEDs become really powerful. It's something we haven't seen on many other devices, and we think it really enables you to instantly see a huge amount of data in a really intuitive way, especially when you're playing live. So when we hold this foot switch, when it's in tap tempo, you can see the MIDI clock turns off. But the LED still flashes, so you know what the tempo is set at, but it will send a stop command via any of the MIDI outputs you've configured. And then when we hold it in again, it will send a start command and seamlessly keep your tempo there as well. So that's some of the dual MIDI clock operation. Now we'll go back into the menu. So we can set the different switch modes there. We've got MIDI. We can set the incoming MIDI channel to listen to. So it's set to Omni by default, and you can set an individual channel if you like. We've got the FlexiPorts. Now this is where you can configure what mode the FlexiPorts are operating in. So we've got FlexiPort 1 and FlexiPort 2. So let's go FlexiPort 1 and we can look at the modes. Now you can set it as a MIDI output with its own independent output routing assignments. You can set it as an expression pedal in, set it as a tap tempo out, so you can send tap tempo pulses to non-MIDI devices, such as a delay that might have a foot switch in. You can actually connect the FlexiPort to that, and it will be able to sync up with the MIDI clocks and the tap tempo that you have running. You can have switch in, so each FlexiPort can have 3 external foot switches connected up to it to control all sorts of parameters and expand the functionality. We've got switch out, which can be used to control pedals or other devices that have remote jack inputs, such as some of the JHS line. You can control the bypass or different parameters using the FlexiPorts. And device link, which is really cool. And device link allows you to take 2 or more devices, connect them together using a single TRS cable, and just like that, they will automatically sync up, share banking functionality, expand the I/O functionality, so you get a huge amount of extra features, but you don't have to combine the message stacks. You can independently assign. Now you've got double the number of MIDI messages, double the stacks, all of this really powerful MIDI functionality available, and you can chain that as many together as you like. So there's some of the FlexiPort options that you can configure. So if we go back, we can also look at the global expression messages. So one request we got really early on when we were showing off some of the features was that a lot of people are using an expression pedal as a dedicated function. So a volume or just a single channel, a single message expression pedal, that you really want to have that set up like that all the time, no matter what bank you're using. And we get it. So we assigned some global expression pedal messages. And these work exactly the same as the bank expression pedal messages, but they work in tandem. So you get double the number of messages, but these are assigned to every bank just the same. So you can have one permanently set to volume. You can stack up to 8 messages on any of the global expression pedals, and that's really powerful. Then we've got the interface, and you can control some different options like the LED brightness. So if you're playing in a really low light room, you might want to just have it set to low. But then if you're playing outside, we've got medium and also high brightness options there as well. And then you've got some other global settings that are just to do with system information and things like that. But we're adding new features all the time, and that's something that we're really passionate about. So if there's something that you would really love to see this device be able to do, chances are it can do it, and we can just add that into the firmware and listen to your feedback and grow. So if you jump on our website, you can see our feature roadmap, and you can also request new features and upvote other people's requested features. So you can see we're only on Bank 0. We've configured all of this unique functionality with some custom LED colors, MIDI clocks that will carry over to multiple banks, and we can just bank up, and we can see, let's set those 2 on, so that when we bank up, we bank down, it retains that information, and we can go through all the banks. And one really nice feature is your tap tempo, your switch mode selection will carry over from bank to bank, so you don't have to worry about changing that. You can just configure the global functionality of the device to suit your setup, and then you can configure every bank as uniquely as you would like. So that's a bit of an overview of some of the current feature set of the Bridge 6. It's a really powerful bit of gear and can be configured to suit almost any use case. And we're really excited to continue adding new features and functionality to the firmware, which we'll be doing right up until day 1 when our devices ship out. So you'll be getting the most up-to-date firmware as soon as you open the box.